All right. Let me ask you, since Ambassador Akejo has been asked to step aside now and is taking a leave of absence, who is now the new man that will be in charge? Because from that statement that was released last week, INEC says that they are going to find another rec to replace him for this election.
Well, Mr. Agbaje, the rec who was until his posting, the rec of Kogi State, has already taken over. I think your medium reported that.
Just for us to know and, I mean, you know, be able to validate that fact.
Yes, it's correct.
So the rec from Kogi State now takes over from him. It's just for the period of the governorship election in Osun.
Well, we'll see how it goes. But for now, he is the rec in Osun State, yes.
Interesting. Just before I allow you to go, tell us about the amendment. I know INEC has always been proposing and asking the legislature to for favors as regards the Electoral Act so that they can do their job well. We saw about 7 portions of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended, being amended now. Tell us, what is INEC's take on some of the portions that are amended now?
Well, the truth of the matter is that it's not a question of doing a favor to INEC. It's a question of doing what is right, doing what is good, and doing what is best, and in accord with international best practices for the country. So if you want to use that term, it's doing the country a favor. Secondly, I am not aware that the Electoral Act has been amended. What I do know is that the Senate has passed some amendments.
Yeah. Go ahead, please. All right, too bad. We lost him again. Well, let's continue now. The Senate, in the past week, passed an amendment to the Nigerian Electoral Act. Some people may ask, of what importance is that? Well, the Electoral Act is a document that guides most political activities in Nigeria, and in fact, every electoral process expected to be in accordance to the Electoral Act, which means this document is a spine of the Nigerian electoral process. Some of the areas of the Electoral Act amended include the form or procedure of voting, which removes the shadow earlier cast over the issue of electronic voting. Also, another area is the proof of election irregularities, which will now be the burden of the petitioner at election tribunal. Also, the controversy over days of the conduct of election may also have been laid to rest, as the lawmakers believe for now INEC does not have the capacity to conduct all elections in one day. These are just some of the areas amended passed at the Senate on the Electoral Act. Well, I've introduced my guest earlier on, Barrister Wahab Shitu and Mr. Ken Okolibo. Barrister Wahab Shitu will be giving us legal perspectives why Mr. Okolibo, who was a political scientist, politician now, from practical experience, will be telling us what the impact of these passage of the amendments in the Senate will look like. From your point of view, Barrister Shitu, tell us, what do you make of, generally, of the amendment at this time?
Well, I think there's no doubting the fact that if we want a free, fair, and credible electoral process, then we must strengthen the hands of the electoral empire. We must ensure that the electoral empire has the capacity to ensure effective management of the electoral system. We must also ensure that the legal framework that is put in place to manage the electoral system is effective, efficient, and will guarantee free, fair, and credible election, which is what all of us desire. I think it is in that context that the present amendment is at the request of INEC. INEC has experimented with several elections in the past, and they know the loopholes. They know the problems they have been facing in delivering on their mandate. And I think these proposals were made to the Senate, and the Senate has also risen to its responsibility of effecting these amendments. And these amendments, like you said, are far-reaching. Some of the proposals, recommended by INEC were rejected, for instance, and some were accepted. And I think overall, what is important and critical is whether this amendment will further enhance the quality of the electoral system, system. And then also, empower INEC to be able to deliver on its mandate in terms of free, fair, and credible elections, which is all what we desire. So you see, one of the amendments that, pointed out is the issue of 12 months imprisonment or
500,000
payment of 500,000.
That's fine.
That's fine. Well, that is plausible, but I don't think it serves as a deterrent. It will have a deterrent effect enough to be able to deter falsification of election results. I believe that whoever falsifies election results should be treated in the same category as a murderer.
So you're faulting that portion?
I'm saying the penalty stipulated is too light, it's too lenient. Because when you say 12 months imprisonment, payment of 500,000 naira fine, or 12 months imprisonment, I would have thought that there should not be an option of fine for someone who falsifies election results, because that person is trying to tamper with the sovereignty of the people. And if you send such a person to a life jail, you will not be.
A lot of people will not.
Yes, I think we should. Our laws should be stronger.
All right.
In order to serve as deterrent.
All right. We're going to break it down one after the other to look at some of the portions that have been, the amendment that's been passed to the Electoral Act. Mr. Okolibo, you've participated actively in elections, and you know from your own point of view, generally, now before we begin to come into the different ones, tell us, what do you feel about the amendment to this Electoral Act coming at this time?
You see, the truth about it is that the Senate has done very well. You look at it, Section 152, subsection 2 that was amended, initially prohibited INEC from carrying out elections using the electronic voting method. And now they have amended Section 152, subsection 2 of the Electoral Act 2010. What tells you is INEC can go ahead and actually carry out elections by using electronic voting. While we don't think INEC might be able to do that in 2015, but it has empowered INEC and has emboldened INEC to look at other procedures in effecting a much more effective electoral process. This is exactly what we're saying. Then when you look at other amendments that were done, for example, my colleague here talked about the section that says 500,000 naira or 12 months in prison. You agree with me that from 1966 till now, how many people have actually gone to jail in terms of electoral offenses? So we are actually practicing a democracy that is not up to 50 years old, and we are starting a process. So when you actually say 500,000 naira or 12 months in prison, it depends on the perspective you're actually looking at it from. You might say it is not effective enough, but we are starting a process. So those youth corpers we're using, for example, in carrying out our civic duties in terms of elections, when do you know that, or even, let me not even use the youth corpers, let me not narrow it down to youth corpers, also the INEC supervisors, when you know that when you are now caught and you falsify election results, and not only falsifying election results, you would actually go to jail for 12 months if you don't have 500,000, because people would say, okay, the politicians that would have aided you can easily pay 500,000. So this is the perspective he's coming from. And that's why he's saying it's not effective enough. But when you now know that when you cannot get 500,000, you're going to go into jail for 12 months in prison, you think twice about it. There are also other procedures that says that, like subsection 77, that was also amended, that says that INEC must go to the court. I'll give you an example. I contested for the House of Reps, and I was in court for 3 years. And that distracted my opponent for 3 years. Do you understand? Now you say INEC should go to court and prove. For example, I am a petitioner.
Now, that burden has been taken away from INEC.
It's been taken away from INEC. Right. I have to go to court to prove that the elections were actually rigged and the elections were not substantially in compliance with the Electoral Act.
All right. Just
so do you understand where I'm
just
coming
a moment.
From?
My colleague, Linda Akigbe, was the floor of the Senate where they passed that particular amendment to the Electoral Act. I will allow you watch and see what happened at the floor, so that we can get more perspective to it. And my guest here will break it down for you to get a sense of what we're talking about.